I don't always fish a bug, but when I do, I prefer this one, the ESP Caddis, my new pattern from Fulling Mill. The caddis pupa is a really complex food item, and it's something that we don't understand very well what the caddis pupa look like when they're in the water. And back, I think in the late 70s, Gary LaFontaine made this comprehensive piece of work, Caddis Flies, this book where he cataloged just about all of the fishing related caddis flies and talked about what those flies looked like in their different stages of life and how anglers could imitate them. And Gary really did a lot of underwater research where he could see the swimming caddis flies and what they looked like underwater. And a lot of caddis flies, that book, is Gary LaFontaine stressing how unique the appearance of a caddis pupa with trapped air bubbles in its body looks underwater to the fish, and how important it would be for the angler who's tying the flies to create an imitation that captured the underwater appearance of the caddis. And as fly tyers, although we have this world of complex materials, for the most part when we tie flies, oftentimes the way a bug looks when it's dead, or the way a bug looks to us, is the way that we imitate the bug when we're creating an imitation of it. And the caddis pupa is a very unique bug in the water that does not look the way it looks if you can, say, stomach pump one out of a fish, even though it is the same stage of the insect. The best, I think, way for me to describe how different the caddis pupa looks in the water to what it looks like out of the water would be to think about a squid. A squid has a great big head, and then it has tentacles, and that's how it looks to us when we can handle one when they're out of the water or dead. But when a squid is swimming, its body pins down, its tentacles pin, it can go in either direction, and an imitation of a squid in the water, just a sluggo or a tapered piece of rubber on both ends that's translucent, looks more like what a squid looks like swimming in the water than something with tentacles. And the caddis pupa is the same way, where when a caddis is in pupal form and it's coming up to the surface, it is a very athletic swimming insect. And the caddis pupa, like the squid, swims where its whole body is pressed tight together, so there's no appendages sticking out. And that's, I think, the most confusing thing to the fly tyer about imitating the caddis pupa is when you see the caddis pupa in a still form, it's got antenna and it's got legs, and you can see a lot of flowy things around it. But if you could see that fly swimming in the water, especially if you backlit it in the sun, you would see it looks like a flying saucer, almost like an oval disc that's shiny all the way around, because there is a exoskeleton or some sort of a membrane that gets air bubbles trapped all through it. And so when the caddis pupa is in the water, it's swimming, and so if you've got current coming this way, the caddis pupa is under control, and it's going to be in the current in the way that the least current is going to be manipulating it. So that means that if the current is going this way, the body of the caddis likes to be streamlined and parallel top and bottom when they're swimming, so they're not getting pushed by extra current. your fly, and so when the fish are having water coming through them and they've got a feeding lane, the caddis are oftentimes facing upstream in the drift, and they're stable and they're moving as they are getting pushed downstream by the current. They're not just free tumbling around. And having a caddis pupa imitation where you can have the trapped air and then you have kind of a green or lighter colored abdomen, and then the thorax of the caddis is a much darker kind of peacocky color, but all of it is tightly contained by this exoskeleton that traps the air. And so when we imitate the caddis pupa, having a fly that has this kind of oval shape and doesn't have extra things coming off of it and will hold in the water parallel to the flow and not perpendicular to it is important for having a good imitation of the caddis pupa. So what the fish see when they see caddis pupa, it's kind of like rusty spinners with mayfly spinners. All of the caddis pupa oftentimes are going to have a lighter color abdomen and then this kind of sparkly colored thorax area where the legs and things are all contained. And having this dark and light transition is really important for the caddis pupa, and also having the shape where the material doesn't have any extra appendages is important to showing the fish the caddis pupa in the way that they are used to seeing it. So having it on a jig hook, so the fly is going to ride with the line coming down to it, it's going to ride this way in the current instead of this way in the current. That is going to make for a more effective caddis pupa, and that's something that a lot of the caddis pupas that are on the market are tied on curved shank hooks that hang up and down, which does not look like the body language position that the fish are used to seeing the caddis pupa when they're feeding. So we're going to put on a couple of these caddis pupa, and I'm going to pop down to another piece of water here and see if we can catch a fish on them. All right, I'm ready to fish here. With the two caddis pupa, I know that although I'm going to focus on casting upstream and drifting them downstream and animating them a little bit so they're twitching, I'm also potentially going to be able to get bites below me as if I were swinging a wet fly. And during the caddis hatch, I will fish the fly both ways. I typically don't let my nymph drift around, dragging the water below me, but there are some nice adult fish that will be looking to eat caddis pupa that are swimming around up near the surface, like the one that just boiled below me a minute ago. So I am not going to be proud about having beautiful looking drifts here. I'm going to cover as much of the ripple with my caddis pupa swimming around as I can. It doesn't spook the fish to pull the caddis pupa around during the caddis hatch, because the caddis pupa are swimming around, moving around within the field of view for the fish anyway. So they're expecting to see things moving quickly, and that's why, you know, they chase, because the things might get away. They're moving that fast. Oh, they're quick. There are some fish here in the run in front of me. We're at the head of a pool, and so oftentimes when the hatch is good, the most adult fish, the most alpha fish, are going to take the prime feeding lies in the pool. And when the hatch is good, that prime feeding lie might be up here in only, you know, a foot of water or less. So this is, oh, there's a fish. This is the time of year where you can often get some of the biggest fish right in the shallow water if you know where and when to look for that feeding. Now, positioning wise, it may look like I'm balls deep in the middle of the run, which is true. However, the reason that I am positioned where I am right now is because I want to put myself in the right position to get kind of below and behind and be able to make a good upstream presentation and get my best strike detection for fish that are quartering above me. So even though I'm out in the middle of the run, I'm targeting these adult fish that push up into the top end of the run where it's a lot shallower. I'm fishing shallower than I'm standing right now, and typically it isn't a good, this is an area where I could be getting fish as well, but the fish that I want to catch are not going to be in the middle of the riffle right now. They're going to be in the better feeding lies that are right up at the top upper current breaks, where they're the first ones to see those big juicy fat caddis pupa that are swimming around in the current. Sometimes when the fishing is tricky and it's hard to detect the strikes, I will make really long casts, which makes it even harder to detect the strikes. But sometimes by kind of catching fish off guard that haven't seen your fly yet, you can get one to bite a little bit more firmly far away the first time they see it. There's one. It's a rainbow. You can start to see some of these larger caddis up in the air. With the caddis pupa, that's a swimming fly. And so the great thing about nymphing with the caddis pupa is you can dead drift it and you can move it around and swing it through the current. And as long as it's moving somewhat with the current, it's all kind of fair game to show the fish something that caddis pupa really do. Because there's very little bug activity happening yet right now, the fish are going to be closer to the bottom and not working as much in the current. They're not expecting to see bugs flying through the current if the bugs aren't hatching and flying through the current right now. So I'm going to lengthen my leader and I'm going to fish the same pocket I'm over right now. I'm going to drop the flies quite a bit deeper into it and see if I can get a deeper water bite from fish that haven't moved up to feed in the shallower top end of it yet. A caddis pupa, it's not like mayflies where the different mayfly nymphs have pretty drastically different appearances. Like a March Brown nymph versus a Hendrickson nymph look very different in the water to the fish. But just about all of the different caddis species have a pupal stage where there's some color shade of kind of light, bright, translucent olive, and they're swimming around. And so the fish kind of get programmed to chasing around different size caddis pupa in that olive color. So you can get away with that single color variation and fish that in a number of different sizes and weights that help you cover the water the best way that you can. Like right now I went to a heavier version of it to kind of search deeper into this pocket. I've got nothing to say to these trout, other than they can kiss my ass. What? So I'm having an ineffective pass. When there's minimum bugs out right now, these fish aren't feeding very actively. There's some catchable fish. It's like 10% of the fish. Whereas when the hatch is like, when you can see the bugs flying around, like a hatch like we saw yesterday with all the mayflies, 90% of the fish are feeding on nymphs down there and they're catchable. So, you know, in a place like this, even though there's a lot of fish, because there's so much food, they know that they can feed when there's a lot of food around. They're not hunting for bugs in between the hatch windows in May. The bugs pour through here from the, you know, so much food on a daily basis. None of these fish are starving to the point that they're going to be feeding at an illogical time for their safety, which would be now. Right now is one of the periods where the bug activity is very low, and the likelihood that the stuff in the water column is safe is at the lowest that it's going to be. When the bug activity is peaking, even if people are out fishing, the likelihood that the things that they're eating aren't going to be good goes down further and further the more food is in the water. And so that's when they're the most vulnerable, is when the most food is in the water. That's when they have their guard let down and they're, you know, feeding actively and eating a lot of bugs on the surface and underneath. You just can't see it underneath, but during the peak of that bug activity, it's just like a fish that's eating every dry fly coming past it. It's much easier to, you know, drift through that fish's feeding window and get a bite.
Half of that bit about you talking about fishing a shallow rig. Will you start from the top and say that again?
I got one. It's a rainbow. The caddis pupa, when they're out, they'll focus on them just like with a certain, you know, phase of a mayfly or caddisfly on the surface when they decide to focus and feed on them. All right, I lost that one.
I think the, you know, you just vaguely holding it downstream and talking probably contributed to that.
Are you criticizing my fishing, my fighting style? We're setting up on a new spot here, and it was very cold this morning. Now it's about 1:30 in the afternoon, and this cold day, the sun has come out. It's warming up a little bit. There's some bug activity, some caddis are coming out. I wouldn't call it a caddis hatch for where we are, but the bug activity is enough that I think we've got a good opportunity to find fish out there in the current that are looking for a smattering of bugs. There's some mayflies out, some caddis out. Nothing is really out in a heavy proliferation, but there's enough things that fish are probably interested to sit in the current and look for food now. There's one. I've got one. We might stomach pump this fish. This fish pounced on that caddis pupa. I bet that that's not the first bug it's eaten recently. So the chances that we'll pull, I don't know what's going to be in it. I would imagine this is a situation where this fish is eating a few different things because there's no proliferation of one certain bug that's happening right now. all I pulled out of that fish was one free living caddis. This is a caddis larva, not a caddis pupa, but so you know that fish just ate a much larger caddis pupa, but that fish is eating caddis, and caddis come in all kinds of different sizes. So that shows you what's in a fish when there's hardly any bugs hatching. There's hardly any fish, any bugs for the fish to eat. That fish was hunting for a bug, a hungry little rainbow trout, so it's moved up into this riffle. I made one drift, and that thing smoked that bug. It ate it in an aggressive way, where it looked like it was looking for something to eat. And it's a little rainbow trout, so that's not a shock, but good start here. So right now I'm fishing a 3-fly rig. And the reason I'm doing that is because the flies I want to imitate are pretty small and pretty light, and having 3 of them, the caddis pupa, I move them around in the current, and having 3 of them in line makes it easier for me to twitch and control the flies kind of higher in the water column. Right now I have these flies on 4x size tippet. So I'm running my tippet to the flies is as heavy as some people run for their main line, oftentimes nymphing. But having that heavier line and heavier line tapered up behind it, because below my indicator stripe right now, I have 6-pound and then 5-pound, which is a 4x diameter in the stuff that I'm using. And with the 3-fly rig, the top 2 flies I have, and they're all spaced out about 17 or 18 inches apart, and the top one is about 3.5 feet below the indicator stripe, and the top 2 flies are both a 2.8 millimeter bead caddis pupa, and the bottom one is a 3.3 millimeter bead caddis pupa. All 3 of them are size 14. That fish took the middle fly in the rig. Got a little downstream wind. The downstream wind can help with the caddis presentation because it keeps your line nice and tight and accelerates the flies downstream a little bit faster than the current, like they're swimming. Because the trout have this little window that they can see, and even if you're making a ridiculous presentation, dragging the fly through the current right up until the moment that you give it some slack before you enter that field, that cone of vision, as long as your caddis moves into that cone of vision, either dead drifting or moving at a speed that the caddis pupa can swim. And keep in mind, when the fish are jumping out of the water chasing caddis pupa during the start of a caddis hatch, it's because the caddis swim at such a rapid rate that the fish accelerate up out of the water to catch them sometimes. So the caddis can move really fast, and that allows you to make presentations where your fly is really moving through the water, oftentimes in an unnatural direction really fast. And if the fish are chasing some caddis pupa around, when your fly moves in an unnatural way into the cone of vision, they might decide to chase it down. And if that was the type of mayfly, that would be a more dead drifting mayfly, like a crawler type mayfly, like a Hendrickson or a sulfur. Your fly was moving sideways while fish were feeding on a crawler mayfly, drifting gently, swimming up to the surface. You would not be getting bites from nice wild tailwater fish that way. So that's one of the cool things about the caddis pupa, is because the swimming pupa is such a dynamic creature in the water, it really gives us a wide range of presentations that we can effectively get the fish to not only bite the fly, but often bite the fly in kind of a really aggressive way that helps us see the strike and maybe might even hook the fish, because they're, you know, moving and tugging the line against the way the current's pulling when they bite it.